"You wretched maid," the woman's voice thundered through the silent house, sharp enough to freeze the air. "You think you can disgrace this family and walk away smiling? I will make sure your name becomes a warning." Welcome to Stories by Tino, where we bring you the most gripping, emotional African stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thank you so much for your unwavering support. You are the reason we keep bringing these powerful tales to life. Before we dive in, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Are you in Atlanta, Toronto, London, Kingston? We love hearing from you. Now, let's get into this story that will shake you to your core. "You wretched maid," the woman's voice thundered through the silent house, sharp enough to freeze the air. "You think you can disgrace this family and walk away smiling? I will make sure your name becomes a warning." Yetund stood frozen in the doorway of the sitting room, her hands trembling at her sides. The expensive chandelier above cast harsh shadows across the marble floor, making the luxurious Victoria Island mansion feel more like a courtroom than a home. Her simple housemaid uniform, a plain blue dress with white collar, seemed to mock her in this moment, a reminder of exactly where she stood in this world. Madame Alucci paced back and forth like a lioness circling wounded prey, her expensive gold jewelry catching the light with each angry movement. Her face, usually composed with the practiced elegance of Lagos high society, was twisted with rage and something darker, something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Madam, please," Yetund whispered, her voice barely audible. "Let me explain." "Explain?" Alucci's laughter was cold, cutting through the air like broken glass. "Explain what exactly? How you came into my house, ate my food, wore the uniform I provided, and then had the audacity, the shameless audacity, to get yourself pregnant under my roof." Yetund's hand moved instinctively to her belly, a protective gesture she couldn't control. The small bump was barely visible under her loose dress, but somehow Alucci had noticed. Somehow she knew. "I'm sorry," Yetund managed, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant." "Sorry," Alucci stepped closer, her perfume, expensive, imported, suffocating, filling the space between them. "You're sorry. Do you know what people will say? Do you know the shame you've brought to this household?" From his position near the window, Oga Abena stood silent. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that commanded respect in boardrooms and political circles. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. But his face was blank, unreadable, as if he were watching a business transaction rather than the destruction of a young woman's life. "Abena," Alucci turned to her husband, her voice dripping with theatrical pain. "Can you believe this? After everything we've done for her. We brought her from that village in Enugu, gave her a job, a place to sleep, food to eat. And this is how she repays us, by bringing disgrace into our home." Abena finally moved, clearing his throat. His voice, when it came, was measured and cold. "It is unfortunate, very unfortunate indeed." That was all he said. 5 words that sealed Yetund's fate more effectively than any shouting could have. Yetund looked at him then, really looked at him, searching his face for something, anything, that might suggest he remembered. That he remembered the night 3 months ago when he'd come home late, when Alucci was away at her women's conference in Abuja. When he'd found Yetund cleaning the study, when he'd started talking about his loneliness, his childless marriage, his frustrations. When one moment of comfort had turned into something neither of them could take back. But his face showed nothing. No recognition, no guilt, no humanity. "Sir, please," Yetund tried again, her voice cracking. "I can explain." "There's nothing to explain," Alucci cut her off sharply. "You think you're the first housemaid to try this trick? Getting pregnant and hopping for what? Money, support, a place in this family." She laughed again, that cruel, brittle sound. "You must think we're fools." "I never asked for anything," Yetund protested weakly. "I was going to leave quietly. I was going to." "Leave?" Alucci's eyes flashed. "Oh, you'll leave all right, but not before everyone knows exactly what kind of girl you are. Not before I make sure no respectable family in Lagos ever makes the mistake of hearing you again." The threat hung in the air like smoke. In Lagos, reputation was everything. For a young woman from a small village, already working as a housemaid, A ruined reputation meant no future at all. It meant returning home in shame, unable to find work, unable to support herself or the child growing inside her. "Madam, I beg you," Yeton dropped to her knees on the cold marble floor. The impact sent a sharp pain through her legs, but she didn't care. "In the name of God, I beg you, don't do this. The baby." "The baby is your problem, not mine," Alachi said icily. "You should have thought about that baby before you opened your legs for whatever useless man got you pregnant. Was it one of the security guards, the driver, some area boy from the streets?" Each accusation was a knife to Yetun's heart. She wanted to scream the truth, to point at Abana and tell his wife exactly whose child this was, but something stopped her. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the last shred of dignity she had left. Or maybe, deep down, she knew that the truth would only make things worse. "Pack your things," Abana finally spoke again, his tone businesslike and final. "I'll have the driver take you to the motor park. From there, you're on your own." "Abana," Alachi protested, "you're too soft. She doesn't deserve even that much help." "It's decided," he said firmly, the only time that evening he'd shown any real authority. "I won't have people saying we threw a pregnant woman onto the streets with nothing. We have a reputation to maintain." The irony wasn't lost on Yetund. They cared more about how their cruelty looked than about the cruelty itself. She pushed herself up from the floor, her legs shaking. Her whole body felt numb, disconnected from reality. This couldn't be happening. Just this morning, she'd woken up hopping to figure out a quiet solution, a way to handle this situation that wouldn't hurt anyone. Now, barely 12 hours later, her entire life was collapsing. "I'll pack," she whispered. As she turned to leave, Aluch's voice followed her one last time. "And Yetund, if you ever, and I mean ever, try to come back here, try to contact us, try to make any claims against this family, I will destroy you. Do you understand me? I will make your life so miserable you'll wish you'd never been born." Yetund paused at the doorway but didn't turn around. Her hand rested protectively on her barely visible belly, and when she spoke, her voice was so soft they almost didn't hear it. "One day," she said quietly, "this child will ask who his father is, and I will tell him the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. Aluch's face went pale, then red with rage. "What did you just say?" But Yetund was already walking away, her footsteps echoing through the grand hallway. Behind her, she could hear Aluch's voice rising to a shriek, hear Abana trying to calm his wife, hear the sound of something expensive shattering against a wall. She climbed the narrow stairs to the small room she'd called home for the past 2 years. It was barely bigger than a closet, with space for only a single bed, a small wardrobe, and a chair. But it had been hers. Safe, quiet, a refuge from the village poverty she'd escaped. Now it was just another place. She was being forced to leave. Her hands shook as she pulled her worn suitcase from under the bed and began folding her few possessions. 3 uniforms, 2 dresses for church, underwear, a sweater, a photo of her late mother, a small Bible her grandmother had given her when she left for Lagos. That was it, 22 years of life packed into one small suitcase. As she worked, tears streamed down her face, but she made no sound. She'd learned long ago that crying loudly only brought more trouble. Silent tears were safer. From downstairs, she could still hear Aluch's voice, shrill and angry, though she couldn't make out the words anymore. Abana's deeper tones responded occasionally, always calm, always controlled. The master and mistress of the house, discussing how to dispose of an inconvenient problem. That's all she was to them now, an inconvenience. Yetund zipped, the suitcase closed, and sat on the edge of the bed for the last time. Her hand moved to her belly again, that protective gesture that was becoming instinctive. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the tiny life inside her. "I'm so sorry you're going to be born into this, but I promise you I will protect you. I will love you. I will make sure you never feel unwanted." A knock on the door made her jump. "The driver is waiting," a voice called. It was one of the other maids, probably terrified that Aluch's rage might spread to her as well. Yetund stood, picked up her suitcase, and took one last look at the small room. Then she opened the door and walked out without looking back. The drive through Lagos streets was silent except for the radio playing low. The driver, an older man named Solomon who'd always been kind to her, kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror but said nothing. What could he say? Everyone in the house would know by morning. Everyone would have heard Aluch's accusations. When they reached the motor park, Solomon helped her with her suitcase and pressed some money into her hand. For transport, he said quietly, and food, take care of yourself, Yetund. She wanted to thank him, to tell him he was the only one in that house who'd shown her any kindness in this nightmare. But the words stuck in her throat, so she just nodded. As Solomon drove away, Yetund stood in the chaos of the motor park, surrounded by buses and touts shouting destinations, by travelers rushing past with their own troubles and destinations. She was just another anonymous figure in the endless stream of people, one more story in a city full of broken dreams. She didn't know where to go. Back to her village meant facing shame and questions. Staying in Lagos meant trying to survive with no job, no references, and a baby on the way. But as the sun began to set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Yetund made a decision. She placed both hands on her belly and spoke out loud, not caring who heard. "We're going to survive this," she said firmly. "You and me, we don't need them. We don't need anyone who doesn't want us." And for the first time since that morning, she felt something other than fear and despair. She felt determination. What would you do if you were thrown out pregnant and alone? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Drop a comment below. We read every single one. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional stories that will touch your soul. What do you think Yetund should do next? Let us know. The house on Victoria Island had not always been a place of cold silences and bitter words. There was a time, years ago, when Aluchi had decorated every room with hope, when she'd imagined children's laughter echoing through the marble hallways, when she'd dreamed of birthday parties in the garden and school runs in the morning. That was before the years of waiting turned hope into desperation, and desperation into something much darker. Aluchi stood at the window of her bedroom, staring out at the manicured lawn below. The gardeners were trimming the hedges, their movements efficient and practiced. Everything in this house ran like clockwork, everything except the one thing that mattered most. She was 42 years old, married for 15 years, and still her womb remained empty. The first few years hadn't been so bad. Everyone had smiled and said, "God's time is the best." Her mother-in-law had brought holy water from various churches. Her friends had recommended fertility doctors, herbal remedies, prayer warriors. Aluchi had tried everything. The injections, the procedures, the fasting, the countless nights on her knees begging God for just one child. Nothing worked. And slowly, the sympathetic looks had turned to something else. Pity mixed with judgment. Whispers at parties that stopped when she walked by. The way women with children unconsciously moved their hands to their bellies when talking to her, as if protecting something precious from her envy. The worst were the family gatherings. Abana's sisters with their multiple children, always loud, always present, filling every room with noise and chaos. And Aluchi, sitting alone in the corner, smiling a smile that hurt her face, pretending she didn't notice how everyone treated her like she was incomplete. "Madam, your breakfast is ready," a maid's voice called from outside the door. Aluchi didn't respond. She was thinking about the day everything changed. It had been 5 years ago, at Abana's mother's birthday party. The old woman had gathered all her children and grandchildren for a photograph. Aluchi had moved to stand beside her husband, but her mother-in-law had stopped her. "Just the blood family," the old woman had said, not even looking at her. "Just those who have contributed to the next generation." Aluchi had stood there, frozen, as the photographer snapped pictures of everyone else. Her husband hadn't said a word, hadn't defended her, hadn't even looked uncomfortable. That night, lying in bed, she'd finally asked him the question she'd been avoiding for years. "Do you regret marrying me?" Abana had been silent for a long time, too long. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured, like he was negotiating a business deal. Marriage is not just about feelings, Alachi. It's about family, legacy, children to carry our name forward. He hadn't said yes, but he hadn't said no either. That was when something inside Alachi had cracked. Not broken, not yet, but cracked. Like a thin line spreading across glass, invisible until you looked closely. She'd started going to different churches, more desperately than before. Prophet after prophet had laid hands on her belly and declared breakthroughs that never came. One had told her there was a curse on her bloodline. Another had said she needed to sow a seed of 50,000 naira for God to open her womb. She'd paid. Nothing happened. The crack had spread wider. Her friends had started inviting her to fewer gatherings, baby showers, christenings, children's birthday parties. At first, they'd made excuses. We didn't want to make you uncomfortable. Eventually, they'd stopped making excuses at all. Abena had started coming home later and later. Business dinners, he'd said. Important meetings. Political connections to maintain. Alachi had known better than to ask questions. Men like Abena always had options. Women who could give them what their wives couldn't. The crack had become a canyon. And then, 3 years ago, something inside her had simply died. Not her desire for a child, that never went away, but something else. Her softness, her kindness, the part of her that had once cared about other people's feelings. She'd started snapping at the housemaids for tiny infractions. A spot on a glass, a crooked cushion, dust on a bookshelf. Her voice had grown sharper, colder. The maids had learned to move quietly through the house, avoiding her when possible, jumping at her commands when not. Abena had noticed, but said nothing. Perhaps he thought it was better to have a cruel wife than a crying one. At least cruelty looked like strength. "Madam," the maid knocked again, more hesitantly this time. "I'm not hungry," Alachi snapped. "Take it away." She heard footsteps retreating quickly. Good, she wanted to be alone. The memory of 2 years ago surfaced, unbidden. She'd been at the market in Lekki when she'd run into an old university friend, Ngozi. They'd been close once, inseparable even. But life had taken them in different directions. Ngozi had been carrying a baby on her back, pregnant with another, holding hands with a toddler. 3 children, and from the look of her worn clothes and tired face, not much money. "Alachi," Ngozi had said with genuine warmth. "It's been so long, how are you?" Alachi had looked at her friend's swollen belly, at the baby sleeping peacefully on her back, at the toddler with sticky hands and a runny nose. And she'd felt something ugly rise up in her chest. "I'm well," she'd said coldly. "Very well indeed, living in Victoria Island now. My husband just bought a new Mercedes. Life is good." The words had been meant to hurt, to make Ngozi feel small. But Ngozi had just smiled, that peaceful smile of someone who had what truly mattered. "That's wonderful, Alachi. God has blessed you differently. But you know, money comes and goes. Children," she'd kissed the top of her toddler's head, "children are forever." Alachi had walked away without another word, her designer handbag clutched so tightly her knuckles turned white. She'd gone home and cried for 3 hours, then never cried again. That's when she'd decided that if she couldn't have the blessing of children, she wouldn't tolerate watching others enjoy it, especially not in her own house. The first maid she'd hired after that decision had been older, in her 50s, with grown children of her own. Safe, unthreatening, but the woman had been slow, her eyes failing, her hands shaking when she cooked. Alachi had fired her within a month. The next one had been young but plain-looking, quiet. Forgettable. She'd lasted 6 months before Alachi had caught her humming while washing dishes. The sound of happiness had been unbearable. She'd accused the girl of stealing and sent her away without references. Then had come others, one after another, each staying only a few months before Alachi found some reason, real or invented, to dismiss them. The house on Victoria Island had developed a reputation. Housemaids whispered warnings to each other. "Don't work for Madame Alachi. She'll destroy you." But there were always desperate girls. Girls from villages who needed work badly enough to risk it. Girls who thought they could be the exception. Yetund had been one of those girls. Alachi remembered the day Yetund had arrived, sent by an agency in Enugu. She'd been so young, so eager to please, 20 years old with bright eyes and a quick smile. She'd curtsied deeply when introduced, her voice soft and respectful. "Thank you for this opportunity, madam. I will work very hard, I promise." Aluchi had studied her critically. Pretty enough to be noticed, but not beautiful enough to be a threat, or so she'd thought. "You'll work here, yes," Aluchi had said coldly. "But understand something. This is my house, my rules. You follow them exactly or you leave. No second chances, no excuses." "Yes, madam, I understand." For the first few months, Yetund had been perfect. She'd woken early, worked late, kept her eyes down, spoke only when spoken to. She'd cleaned until everything sparkled, cooked exactly as instructed, never complained. But Aluchi had watched her, always watched her. She'd noticed how Yetund sometimes paused in front of the photos on the wall. Photos of Aluchi and Abana's wedding, of family gatherings, of a life that looked perfect from the outside. She'd noticed how Yetund's eyes would linger on the empty nursery that Aluchi kept locked, the room still painted yellow with anticipation from years ago. And she'd noticed, with growing rage, how Abana had started to notice Yetund too. It had been subtle at first. A good morning that lasted a second too long. A thank you for his breakfast that included eye contact. Questions about her village, her family, her life before Lagos. Aluchi had seen it all, and the crack inside her had shattered completely. She'd started testing Yetund. Impossible tasks, contradictory instructions, punishment for things that weren't her fault, waiting to see when the girl would break, when she would talk back, when she would give Aluchi an excuse to destroy her. But Yetund had only worked harder, had only been more respectful, more kind, more everything that Aluchi used to be before bitterness had eaten her alive. The worst moment had come 6 months ago. Aluchi had been having tea with some women from church, wealthy women, influential women, women whose opinions mattered in Lagos society. They'd been sitting in the garden when Yetund had brought out more refreshments. One of the women, Bissy, had been telling a story about her daughter's pregnancy, about expecting her first grandchild. The other women had cooed and congratulated her, and Aluchi had sat there, smiling her painful smile, feeling like she was being slowly skinned alive. Then Yetund had tripped slightly, nearly dropping the tray. She'd recovered quickly, apologizing profusely, but in that moment of imbalance, one of the women, Hadiza, had reached out to steady her. "Careful, my dear," Hadiza had said kindly. "Are you all right? You're not hurt." Yetund had assured her she was fine, had served the tea perfectly, had disappeared back into the house. But Hadiza had watched her go with a thoughtful expression. Then she'd turned to Aluchi and said, "That girl is very sweet, well-mannered. You're lucky to have found such a good housemaid. They're so rare these days." The other women had agreed, going on about how hard it was to find reliable help, how most housemaids these days were lazy or thieves. "And she has such a gentle way about her," Bissy had added. "The kind of girl who will make a good mother someday." The words had hit Aluchi like a physical blow. The kind of girl who will make a good mother someday. That night, Aluchi had lain awake, staring at the ceiling while those words echoed in her mind. The kind of girl who will make a good mother. Young, fertile, kind, everything Aluchi wasn't, everything Aluchi would never be. And that's when the idea had first formed. Not a conscious plan, not yet, but a dark seed that had started growing in her poisoned heart. If I can't have happiness, why should anyone else? Now, standing at her bedroom window 2 years after Yetund had first arrived, Aluchi thought about everything that had led to last night's confrontation. The years of pain, the social shame, the dying marriage, the empty womb that felt like a curse. She thought about how she'd suspected for weeks that Yetund was pregnant, how she'd watched the girl's body changing, had seen her running to the bathroom in the mornings, had noticed how she'd started wearing looser clothes. She thought about the satisfaction she'd felt when she'd finally confronted her. The power, the control, the ability to hurt someone else the way life had hurt her. But beneath all that, buried so deep she almost didn't recognize it, was something else. Fear. because Yetun's final words before leaving had struck something cold and sharp into Alach's heart. One day this child will ask who his father is, and I will tell him the truth. What truth? What had the girl meant? Had there been something in her eyes when she'd looked at Abana? Had there been a moment, just a flash of recognition between them that Alachi had missed? No, impossible. Abana would never touch a housemaid. He had too much pride, too much reputation to protect. But then why had he been so quick to send her away? Why hadn't he questioned her more, demanded to know who the father was, threatened to call the police if she didn't name him? Why had he just stood there, silent and cold, like a man trying very hard not to show guilt? Alach's hands gripped the windowsill until her knuckles went white. No, she was being paranoid. The girl had just been making trouble, trying to cause confusion on her way out. That's what desperate people did. But the fear didn't go away. The door opened behind her. Alachi didn't turn around. She knew from the heavy footsteps that it was Abana. "You need to eat something," he said. His voice was distant, businesslike, the way he always spoke to her now. "I'm not hungry." "Alachi." "I said I'm not hungry." She finally turned to face him. "Or are you suddenly concerned about my well-being?" Abana's jaw tightened. He was still in his suit from this morning, probably about to leave for the office. Always leaving, always somewhere else. "What happened last night was necessary," he said carefully. "But it's over now, we move forward." "Move forward," Alachi repeated bitterly. "Yes, we're very good at that, aren't we? Moving forward, pretending everything is fine." "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to tell me the truth." The words came out before she could stop them. "About that girl, about why you were so quick to send her away." Something flickered across Abana's face, too quick to identify. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual mask of control. "She was pregnant and unmarried in our house. That's enough reason." "Is it?" "Yes." They stared at each other across the expensive bedroom. Two people who'd once loved each other, now separated by years of disappointment and unspoken resentments. "I have a meeting," Abana said finally. "I'll be home late." Of course he would. After he left, Alachi sat on the edge of their bed, the bed they barely shared anymore, and felt the silence of the house press in around her. 15 years of marriage, a mansion in Victoria Island, designer clothes, expensive cars, respect in society. And none of it meant anything at all. Somewhere in Lagos, Yetund was out there with nothing but a suitcase and a growing belly. Thrown away, discarded, shamed. And yet, Alachi thought with something that might have been envy if she'd allowed herself to feel it. Yetund had something Alachi would never have. She had a child on the way. The thought was like poison spreading through her veins. Even in destruction, even in disgrace, that girl had the one thing Alachi wanted most. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. But fairness, Alachi had learned, was a luxury for people who still had hope. And her hope had died a long time ago. 2 years earlier, the bus from Enugu had pulled into the Lagos motor park at dawn, and Yetund had stepped off with her small bag and a heart full of dreams. She'd never seen anything like Lagos. The noise hit her first, car horns blaring, traders shouting, music blasting from a dozen different speakers at once. Then the smell, a mixture of exhaust fumes, frying akara, and humanity packed too tightly together. The sheer size of everything overwhelmed her. Buildings that seemed to touch the sky, roads wider than her entire village, people everywhere, moving with purpose and speed that made her dizzy. "First time in Lagos?" an older woman had asked, noticing how Yetund stood frozen, clutching her bag. "Yes, Ma." The woman had smiled kindly. "Don't worry, you'll learn. Just keep your bag close and don't trust anyone who offers to help you for free. Nothing is free in Lagos." Yetund had nodded, taking the advice to heart. She'd found a corner to sit and wait, checking the address on the paper the agency had given her. Mrs. Alachi Akafer, Victoria Island. The job was live-in housemaid, with room and board plus 20,000 naira per month. It wasn't much, but it was more than she could make in her village. More importantly, it was a chance. A chance to escape the poverty that had claimed her mother's life 2 years ago. A chance to send money back to her younger brother still in school. A chance at a future that didn't involve marrying the first man who asked, having children she couldn't afford to feed, and dying young like her mother had. When the driver from the Aakaffer household had finally arrived, Yetund had been struck by the car itself. A sleek black vehicle that looked like it cost more than her family would see in 10 lifetimes. The driver, Solomon, had been kind, asking about her journey, warning her gently that Madame Alachi was particular about how things should be done. But nothing could have prepared Yetund for the house. As they'd driven through Victoria Island, she'd pressed her face to the window like a child, staring at the mansions, the manicured gardens, the tall gates with security guards. This was wealth beyond anything she'd imagined. This was a different world. When they'd pulled up to the Aakaffer residence, Yetund had actually gasped. The house was 3 stories tall, painted cream with brown trim, surrounded by a high wall and an electric gate. The compound was bigger than her entire village square. There was a fountain in the front yard, an actual fountain with water flowing constantly, as if water was something to waste on decoration. "Close your mouth," Solomon had said with a gentle smile. "You'll see many things here. Don't let them distract you from your work." Inside, the house was even more impressive. Marble floors so shiny Yetund could see her reflection. A chandelier in the entrance hall that sparkled like stars. Furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. Air conditioning that made the whole house cool despite the Lagos heat outside. And then she'd met Madame Alachi. The woman had descended the stairs like a queen, wearing an expensive lace buba and wrapper even though it was just a regular Tuesday morning. Her makeup was flawless, her jewelry gold and heavy. But it was her eyes that had struck Yetund most, cold, assessing, seeing right through her. "So you're the new girl," Alachi had said, circling Yetund slowly. "From Enugu." "Yes, madam." Yetund had curtsied deeply, the way her grandmother had taught her. "The agency says you have experience." "Yes, madam. I worked for Pastor Okonkwo's family in our village for 3 years." A village pastor. Alachi's tone had made it clear what she thought of that. "This is not a village, girl. This is Lagos, Victoria Island. Do you understand the difference?" "Yes, madam." "I don't think you do, but you'll learn." Alachi had stopped in front of her, standing so close Yetund could smell her expensive perfume. "I have rules in this house, many rules. You will wake at 5 every morning. You will prepare breakfast by 6:30. You will clean the entire house daily. You will wash, iron, cook, serve, and do whatever else I require. You will not be lazy. You will not steal. You will not gossip with the other staff. You will not leave this compound without permission. And you will never, ever disrespect me or my husband. Do you understand?" "Yes, madam." "If you break any of these rules, you will be dismissed immediately. No second chances. No excuses. There are 100 girls who would kill for this job. Remember that." "Yes, madam. Thank you, madam." Alachi had studied her for another long moment, then waved her hand dismissively. "Solomon will show you your room. Report to the kitchen at 5 tomorrow morning. The cook will tell you what to do." That first day, Yetund had been shown to a small room on the ground floor near the kitchen. It was tiny, barely big enough for a single bed, a small wardrobe, and a chair. But it had a window, a door that locked, and most incredibly, a bathroom attached. A whole bathroom just for her. In her village, she'd shared a pit latrine with 20 other families. She'd sat on the bed and allowed herself one moment of tears. Not sad tears, overwhelmed tears. She was in Lagos in a big house with a real job. She would make this work. She had to. The first few weeks had been brutal. Yetund had woken at 4:30 every morning, terrified of oversleeping. She'd worked until her hands ached and her feet swelled. The cook, an older woman named Mama Blessing, had been kind but stern, teaching her how Madame Alachi liked things done. "Everything must be perfect," Mama Blessing had warned. "The vegetables cut exactly the same size, the floors cleaned in a specific pattern, even the towels must be folded a certain way. Madam will notice if anything is wrong." And Alachi did notice everything. A water spot on a glass, a wrinkle in a tablecloth, dust on a picture frame that Yetund had cleaned just that morning. Each imperfection was met with sharp criticism, sometimes shouted across the house loud enough for everyone to hear. But Yetund had learned quickly. She'd watched, listened, and adapted. She'd bitten her tongue when Aluchi had called her stupid for not knowing how to use the complicated washing machine. She'd apologized when criticized for cooking rice that was too soft, then too hard, then finally just right but somehow still wrong. Through it all, she'd kept her head down and worked harder. Oga Abena had barely noticed her existence at first. He was a man who came and went at odd hours, always busy with business or politics. When he was home, he stayed in his study or the sitting room, reading newspapers or making phone calls. He spoke to the staff only to give orders, and even then, usually through Aluchi. But Yetund had noticed him. It was impossible not to. He was a handsome man, tall and well-built, with the kind of confidence that came from power and money. His voice was deep and authoritative. When he entered a room, everyone straightened up automatically. She'd also noticed that he and Madame Aluchi barely spoke to each other. They lived in the same house, ate at the same table, appeared together at church on Sundays. But there was no warmth between them, no affection. They were like two strangers sharing space, careful not to touch, even by accident. The house itself felt like that, cold despite the luxury. There was no laughter, no music, no joy, just the sound of servants moving quietly through marble halls, trying not to disturb the heavy silence. About 3 months into her employment, Yetund had been dusting the upstairs hallway when she'd noticed a locked door. She'd asked Mama Blessing about it later. "That's the nursery," Mama Blessing had said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "Madam decorated it years ago, but she won't let anyone in there now. Don't ask about it. Don't even look at the door too long." "Why?" Yetund had whispered. Mama Blessing had just shaken her head sadly. "Some pains are too deep to talk about. Just leave it alone." But Yetund had understood. She'd seen enough to piece together the story. A wealthy woman who had everything except the one thing she wanted most. A husband who stayed married but didn't seem to love his wife. A house that looked perfect but felt dead inside. It had made her sad for them, in a way. All this money, all this power, and they seemed more miserable than the poorest people in her village. Still, it wasn't her business. She was just the maid. Her job was to clean, cook, and be invisible. Then one Sunday, about 6 months after she'd arrived, something had shifted. The family had returned from church, one of those big churches in Lekki where important people went to see and be seen. Aluchi had immediately gone upstairs to change, complaining loudly about the heat and the long service. Yetund had been in the kitchen preparing lunch when Abena had walked in. She jumped, startled. He never came to the kitchen. "Sir, do you need something?" she'd asked, her eyes on the floor as she'd been taught. "Water," he'd said, "with ice." She'd rushed to get it, her hands shaking slightly as she filled the glass. When she'd handed it to him, their fingers had touched briefly. She'd pulled back as if burned. "Thank you," he'd said, then. Surprisingly, "What's your name again?" "Yetund, sir." "Yetund," he'd said it slowly as if testing the sound. "From Enugu." "Yes, sir." "How long have you been with us now?" 6 months, sir." He'd nodded, studying her in a way that had made her uncomfortable. Not threatening, not yet just noticing her, really seeing her for the first time. "You're doing well," he'd said finally. "My wife is difficult to please, but you handle her well." "Thank you, sir." He'd drunk the water, still watching her. Then he'd set the glass down and left without another word. It should have been nothing, a brief, polite exchange. But Yetund had felt uneasy for the rest of the day without quite knowing why. After that, Abena had started to notice her more. A good morning when she served breakfast. A thank you when she brought his evening tea. Small conversations about nothing important, the weather, the food, whether she was adjusting to Lagos. Mama Blessing had noticed and had pulled Yetund aside one evening. "Be careful," the older woman had warned. "Rich men like Oga Abena, they can be kind one day and dangerous the next. Keep your distance. Do your work and nothing else." "I am, Mama. I'm just being polite." "Politeness can be misunderstood. Trust me, child. I've seen it before." Yetund had taken the warning seriously. She'd become more careful, more distant. When Abena spoke to her, she'd answered briefly and found reasons to leave quickly. But it had been hard to ignore the loneliness in his eyes. Hard to miss how he seemed to light up slightly when someone showed him kindness. Hard not to feel sympathy for a man who had everything but seemed to have nothing at all. Meanwhile, Aluch's treatment had grown worse. The criticisms became more frequent, more personal. It was no longer just about the work, it was about Yetund herself. Too slow, too clumsy, too stupid, too everything. One day, Yetund had been cleaning the sitting room when she'd accidentally knocked over a small decorative bowl. It hadn't broken, just rolled across the floor, but Aluchi had appeared as if summoned by the sound. "You useless girl," she'd screamed. "Do you know how much that cost? Do you think you can just break things in my house?" "I'm sorry, madam. It didn't break." "Don't talk back to me. You think because Olga speaks to you sometimes that you're special. You think you matter." The accusation had shocked Yetund. "No, madam, I would never." "Shut up. Just shut up and get out of my sight." Yetund had fled to her room and cried for an hour. Not because of the shouting, she was used to that, but because of what Aluchi had implied. That there was something inappropriate between her and Olga Abena, that she was trying to be special. It wasn't true. She'd never done anything wrong. She'd been respectful, professional, distant. But somehow, just by existing, just by being young and female in this house, she'd become a threat to a woman who saw threats everywhere. That evening, Yetund had made a decision. She would save her money and leave as soon as she could afford to. Maybe in a year, she'd have enough to start a small business back in Enugu. Something safe. Something far away from this cold house and its broken people. But fate, as it turned out, had different plans. 3 months later, on a night when Aluchi was away at a women's conference in Abuja, when the house was quiet and dark, when Yetund was cleaning Olga's study late because he'd asked her to. That's when everything changed. That's when the thing happened that would eventually lead to her standing in the same house, pregnant and terrified, being called a disgrace, and thrown out into the Lagos night. But on that evening, 9 months ago, as she'd worked in the study and Olga Abena had come in smelling of whiskey and loneliness, as he'd started talking about his marriage and his pain, as one moment of comfort had become something neither of them could take back. On that evening, Yetund had still believed that tomorrow would be better than today. She'd still had hope. Innocence and loneliness are a dangerous combination. We've all been in situations where one moment changed everything. What do you think? Who's really to blame when good people make terrible choices? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Coming chapter is coming, and trust me, you won't believe what happens when Yetund discovers she's pregnant. The real drama is just beginning. Yetund had missed her period for the 2nd month in a row when she finally accepted what her body had been trying to tell her. She was pregnant. The realization had come on a Thursday morning, 2 months after that night in the study. She'd been preparing breakfast when a wave of nausea had hit her so hard she'd barely made it to the bathroom in time. As she'd knelt on the cold tiles, vomiting up the little bit of water she'd drunk that morning, the truth had crashed over her like cold water. No, please God, no. But God, it seemed, wasn't listening. Or perhaps he was listening and had decided this was the consequence she deserved. For the next week, Yetund had moved through the house like a ghost, her mind spinning with panic while her hands continued their work automatically. She'd served breakfast, cleaned rooms, washed clothes, all while her thoughts screamed the same question over and over. What am I going to do? She couldn't have this baby. Not here, not now, not like this. But even as the thought formed, her hand had moved to her belly in a protective gesture she couldn't control. There was a life inside her, tiny, innocent, unaware of the chaos it had already caused just by existing. She'd thought about telling Olga Abena. That first week after she'd suspected, she'd rehearsed it 100 times in her mind. She'd catch him alone, speak quietly, explain what had happened. He was a powerful man. He could help. He could make arrangements. He could. But every time she tried to approach him, the words had died in her throat. Because the truth was, that night in the study, Olga Abena had been drunk. Sad, vulnerable, and she'd been, compassionate, foolish, weak. He'd been talking about his marriage, about how Aluchi had become a stranger to him, about the years of trying for children and the slow death of hope. His voice had been thick with whiskey and pain, and for the first time, he'd seemed human rather than just Olga, just a man who was hurting. "Do you know what it's like?" he'd said, not really looking at her. "To live with someone who blames you for everything that's gone wrong in their life. To wake up every day and see hatred in the eyes of the person you married." Yetund had been wiping down his bookshelf, unsure what to say. What did housemaids say to their employers when they revealed their pain? "I'm sure Madam doesn't hate you, sir," she'd offered quietly. He'd laughed bitterly. "You're kind to say so, but you're also young. You don't understand yet how love can turn into something ugly when it's disappointed enough times." Then he'd looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his eyes had made her heart race with an emotion she couldn't name. Not attraction, not exactly. Something more complicated. Recognition, maybe. Two lonely people in a house full of silence. "You're a good girl, Yetund," he'd said softly. "Kind, the way people should be to each other." She should have left then, should have made an excuse and walked out, but she'd been 20 years old and alone in Lagos and starving for any scrap of kindness. So she'd stayed. And when he'd reached for her hand, just her hand at first, nothing more, she hadn't pulled away. What happened next had been quick, fumbling, almost apologetic. Not rough, but not gentle either. Just two people trying to fill an emptiness inside themselves and failing. Afterward, he'd looked horrified, had told her to go, had avoided looking at her for weeks. They'd never spoken of it, never acknowledged it. She'd tried once, in those early weeks, to catch his eye, to see if there was any recognition of what had happened. But he'd looked through her as if she were invisible. And now she was pregnant with his child. But how could she tell him? He'd made it clear through his silence that the night had never happened. If she brought it up now, he'd deny it. Or worse, he'd accuse her of trying to trap him, to extort money from him. And Madame Aluchi, if she ever found out the truth, she wouldn't just fire Yetund. She'd destroy her. Completely. Make sure she never worked again. Make sure everyone in Lagos knew her as the housemaid who'd seduced her employer. Even though that wasn't what had happened. Even though Yetund had been just as lost and confused as he'd been. But who would believe her? A poor village girl against a powerful Lagos couple. Her word against theirs. No, she couldn't tell anyone. She had to handle this alone. 3 weeks after she'd confirmed the pregnancy, Yetund had made a plan. She would save every kobo of her salary for the next 2 months. Then she would quietly resign, claiming a family emergency back in Enugu. By the time anyone noticed she was pregnant, she'd be long gone. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was the only one she had. The problem was, her body had other ideas. The morning sickness had gotten worse. She'd started losing weight instead of gaining it, unable to keep food down. Dark circles had appeared under her eyes. Her uniforms, always loose, had hung even more loosely on her shrinking frame. And Madame Aluchi had noticed everything. "You look terrible," Aluchi had said one morning, studying her with narrowed eyes. "Are you sick?" "Just a stomach problem, madam. It will pass." "It better pass quickly. I don't pay you to be sick." But the scrutiny had intensified. Yetund had felt Aluchi's eyes on her constantly, watching, calculating. She'd started making mistakes, forgetting ingredients in meals, missing spots while cleaning, dropping things. The stress and the sickness were making her clumsy, and every mistake gave Aluchi more ammunition. Then one evening, about 3 months into the pregnancy, Yetund had been folding laundry when she'd suddenly needed to vomit. She'd run to the bathroom, but hadn't locked the door properly in her rush. Aluchi had followed her, had pushed open the door, had watched Yetund kneeling on the floor, retching miserably. When Yetund had finally looked up, wiping her mouth with shaking hands, she'd seen Aluchi standing in the doorway. And the expression on the woman's face had been terrifying. Not angry, not yet, Something worse. Understanding, calculation, a cruel kind of satisfaction. "How far along are you?" Alechi had asked quietly. "Madam, Don't lie to me. I know pregnancy's sickness when I see it. I've spent 15 years watching other women go through what I never could. So tell me, how many months?" Yetun's mind had raced. Lying seemed pointless now. 3 months, madam." 3 months. Alechi had repeated it slowly. "So you've been working in my house, eating my food, sleeping under my roof, all while carrying some man's bastard child." "I was going to leave, madam. I was just saving money first." "Leave? Oh, you'll leave all right. But first, I want to know who the father is. Which one of the staff have you been spreading your legs for? The driver? One of the security guards?" The accusation had stung like a slap. "It's not anyone here, madam." "Then who?" "Someone from before, from Enugu." The lie had come easily, desperately. Alechi had studied her, and Yetund had forced herself to hold her gaze, to not look away, to not let her eyes drift toward the study where it had happened. "You're lying," Alechi had said finally. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is that you've brought shame into this house, and I won't tolerate it. Please, madam, just let me resign quietly. I'll leave tomorrow. You'll never see me again." "Oh, it's too late for quiet resignations. You should have thought of that before you got yourself pregnant." Alechi had smiled then, a cold, cruel smile. "No, I think everyone needs to know exactly what kind of girl you are. I think I'll tell the agency, the church, everyone who might consider hearing you. I'll make sure they all know you're a prostitute who gets pregnant and tries to hide it." "I'm not a prostitute." The words had burst out before Yetund could stop them. "No, then what do you call a girl who opens her legs for money? Because that's what this job is to you, isn't it? Money. And you thought you could use your body to get more." Tears had streamed down Yetund's face. "That's not true. I would never." "Get out of my sight," Alechi had said, her voice dropping to something even more dangerous than shouting. "I need to think about what to do with you." The next 2 weeks had been torture. Alechi hadn't fired her immediately, which had somehow been worse than being thrown out. Instead, she'd made Yetund's life a living hell. Impossible tasks, constant criticism, public humiliation in front of the other staff. And through it all, Oga Abena had said nothing, done nothing. He'd watched his wife berate Yetund daily and had simply looked away. That's when Yetund had understood something terrible. Even if she told the truth, even if she admitted that the baby was his, he would never acknowledge it. He would protect himself, his reputation, his marriage, and she would still be destroyed. So she'd kept silent, had endured, had prayed every night for strength, for guidance, for a miracle that didn't come. Until yesterday, when Alechi had finally called her into the sitting room and made everything official. When she'd screamed accusations in front of Oga Abena, had threatened to ruin her reputation, had ordered her out of the house. And Yetund, kneeling on that cold marble floor, had finally spoken the words she'd been holding back for months. "One day this child will ask who his father is, and I will tell him the truth." She hadn't said it to hurt anyone, hadn't said it as a threat. She'd said it because it was simply true. Children did ask about their fathers, and when this child asked, Yetund would tell him. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, just because every child deserved to know where they came from, even if the truth was complicated and painful. Now, sitting in the motor park with her small suitcase and 20,000 naira that Solomon had given her, Yetund felt the baby move for the first time. It was barely a flutter, like butterfly wings inside her belly, but it was real, undeniable. She placed both hands on her stomach and closed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you're being born into this mess. But I promise you, my baby, I will love you, I will protect you, and I will never, ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of existing." Around her, Lagos moved with its usual chaos. Buses came and went. People hurried past with their own problems. The sun climbed higher in the sky, bringing heat and harsh light. Yetund opened her eyes and made a decision. She wouldn't go back to Enugu. Going home meant facing questions she couldn't answer, shame she couldn't explain. Her grandmother was old and sick. Her younger brother was depending on her to support his school fees. How could she return pregnant, jobless, disgraced? No, she would stay in Lagos, find a cheaper place to live, find work, any work, clean houses, sell goods in the market, whatever it took. She would survive, for her baby's sake. She stood up, picked up her suitcase, and started walking. She didn't know where she was going, didn't have a plan beyond the next hour, but she kept walking anyway, one foot in front of the other because that's all she could do. Behind her, in the mansion in Victoria Island, Alechi stood at her bedroom window watching the sun rise over Lagos. She'd barely slept, her mind churning with the events of the previous night. That girl's final words echoed in her head. One day this child will ask who his father is, and I will tell him the truth. What truth? What had she meant? Alechi's eyes drifted to her husband's side of the bed. He'd slept there, or pretended to sleep, but they hadn't spoken, hadn't touched. The silence between them had been heavy with things unsaid. In the morning light, a terrible suspicion began to form. Small things she'd noticed but dismissed. The way Abena had sometimes watched the maid. The way he'd been quick to send her away. The way he'd looked almost guilty when Yetund had made that final statement. No, it was impossible, unthinkable. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Alechi knew from experience that doubts, once planted, grew like weeds until they choked everything else. She would find out the truth, whatever it took. And if her suspicions were correct, if Abena had betrayed her with a housemaid, had given that girl the one thing Alechi wanted most, then there would be consequences. Not just for Yetund, for everyone. Secrets have a way of coming to light, don't they? Yetund is pregnant and alone, while Alechi's suspicions are growing. What do you think will happen when the truth finally comes out? Drop your predictions in the comments. And make sure you hit that like button and subscribe because next chapter is going to blow your mind. The confrontation you've been waiting for is coming, and nobody is ready for what happens next. 4 months had passed since Yetund left the Akafir mansion, and Lagos had taught her lessons that no village could have prepared her for. She'd found a room in Agegunnel, a crowded, poor neighborhood where people didn't ask questions if you paid your rent on time. The room was tiny, barely 6 feet by 8 feet, with walls so thin she could hear her neighbors' conversations. The roof leaked when it rained. The communal toilet was shared by 20 people, but it was hers, and it was all she could afford. She'd found work washing clothes for a woman who ran a small laundry business. The pay was terrible, 500 naira per day, but it was something. She'd also started selling pure water at the bus stop in the evenings, carrying heavy bags on her head until her neck ached and her feet swelled. Her belly had grown. At 7 months now, it was impossible to hide. The baby kicked constantly, especially at night when Yetund lay on her thin mattress trying to sleep through the noise of Agegunnel, music blaring, people shouting, generators rumbling. She was tired all the time, hungry most of the time, scared every moment of every day. But she was surviving, and the baby was healthy. That's what the nurse at the free clinic had told her last week. Your baby is strong. Keep eating well, rest when you can, and everything will be fine. Eating well, as if that were possible on what she earned. Still, Yetund tried. She bought the cheapest food she could find, gari, beans, the occasional piece of fish. She drank lots of water. She took the free vitamins the clinic provided. She did everything she could to make sure her baby had what it needed, even if she went to bed hungry. Some nights, lying in the darkness with her hand on her moving belly, Yetund would think about the Akafir mansion. The soft bed, the air conditioning, 3 meals a day, safety behind high walls and electric gates. Then she would remember Madame Alechi's cruelty, Oga Abena's cowardice, and the cold emptiness of that beautiful house. And she would look around her tiny room with its cracked walls and leaking roof and think, at least here I can breathe. Meanwhile, back in Victoria Island, Alechi's suspicions had grown into an obsession. She'd spent the last 4 months watching her husband, studying him, looking for signs of guilt, and she'd found them everywhere. The way he'd grown quieter, more distant. The way he sometimes stared at nothing with an expression she couldn't read. The way he jumped when she'd mentioned, casually, that she'd seen a pregnant woman in the market who reminded her of their former housemaid. Which housemaid? He'd asked too quickly. Yetund, remember her, the one we dismissed. Oh, her. He'd gone back to reading his newspaper, but his hands had been shaking slightly. I don't remember what she looked like. Liar. Aluchi had also started asking questions. Carefully, discreetly. She'd called the agency that had sent Yetund, pretending to need a reference for another position. The woman at the agency had been confused. But madam, didn't you dismiss her? The girl didn't give us a reason for leaving, just said the position didn't work out. Yes, but I'm curious. Did she find other work? I don't know, madam. She never contacted us again. Dead end. Aluchi had even driven to Agegunnel one afternoon, asking around for a girl from Enugu named Yetund. But Agegunnel was huge, chaotic, and full of people who minded their own business. No one knew anything. Or if they did, they weren't telling. But Aluchi was patient. She'd waited 15 years for a child. She could wait a few more months for the truth. Then one Sunday, everything changed. Aluchi and Abena had attended their usual church service at Daystar in Lekki. They'd sat in their customary pew, dressed in expensive traditional attire, smiling and greeting other wealthy couples. The perfect Lagos power couple. After the service, while Abena was talking to some politicians outside, Aluchi had been approached by an old family friend, Dr. Ez, who ran a private hospital in Ikoyi. Aluchi, my dear, Dr. Ez had said warmly. How are you? It's been too long. I'm well, doctor, and you? Getting old, getting tired, but the hospital keeps me busy, he'd smiled. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. I had a patient recently who said she used to work for you, a young woman pregnant from Enugu. Yetund, I think her name was. Aluchi's heart had started racing, but she'd kept her face calm. Yes, she did work for us briefly. Why do you ask? She came in for a prenatal checkup. Free clinic day. Sweet girl, very polite. But when she gave her employment history for her records, she mentioned your household. I just wanted to confirm, in case there were any issues. No issues at all. She left on her own terms. The lie had come smoothly. Is she well? Pregnant and struggling from what I could see, but the baby is healthy. Due in about 2 months, I believe. 2 months. Aluchi's mind had raced, counting backward. If the baby was due in 2 months, that meant Yetund was 7 months pregnant now, which meant she'd gotten pregnant 4 months before she left, which meant she'd already been 3 months pregnant when Aluchi had discovered it, which meant the pregnancy had started. Aluchi had felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. 10 months ago. The pregnancy had started 10 months ago. She'd remembered suddenly. 10 months ago, she'd been in Abuja for a women's conference. She'd been gone for 5 days. 5 days when Abena had been alone in the house with the staff. With Yetund. The realization had hit her like a physical blow. Aluchi, are you all right? Dr. Ez had looked concerned. You've gone pale. I'm fine, just the heat. She'd forced a smile. Thank you for letting me know about Yetund. If I see her, I'll make sure she knows about your hospital. She'd made her excuses and found Abena, told him they needed to leave immediately. In the car, she'd been silent, her mind spinning with calculations, memories, horrible certainties. When they'd arrived home, she'd gone straight to her bedroom and locked the door. She'd sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing, as the truth settled over her like a suffocating blanket. Her husband had slept with their housemaid, had gotten her pregnant, had stood by silently while Aluchi had thrown the girl out, had let Aluchi believe the father was some unknown man, some security guard or street boy. All this time he'd known. He'd known that baby was his, and he'd said nothing. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that for a moment Aluchi couldn't breathe. All those years of struggling with infertility, all those years of shame and disappointment, all those prayers and procedures and tears. And Abena had gotten a housemaid pregnant without even trying. It was almost funny. If anything could be funny when your entire life was revealed to be a lie. But as the shock faded, something else took its place. Not just anger, though that was there, burning hot and bright. Something colder, more deliberate. Calculation. If Abena thought he could hide this, he was wrong. If he thought he could betray her and walk away without consequences, he was mistaken. If he thought she would simply accept this humiliation, this ultimate insult, he didn't know who he was dealing with. Aluchi stood up and looked at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was still perfect. Her hair was still elegant. Her expensive jewelry still gleamed. On the outside, she looked exactly the same. But inside, something fundamental had changed. She wasn't going to cry, wasn't going to beg, wasn't going to forgive. She was going to make them both pay. But first, she needed proof, real proof, something Abena couldn't deny. She picked up her phone and called a number she'd hoped never to use, a private investigator her friend had once recommended for delicate matters. "Good afternoon, I need someone found," she said when he answered. "A young woman, pregnant, living somewhere in Lagos. I'll pay whatever it takes." While Aluchi was making her plans, Yetund was at the market buying vegetables for her dinner. The baby was particularly active today, kicking and turning, making her breathe hard with every movement. She was haggling with a tomato seller, trying to get the price down by 10 naira. Every kobo mattered now, when she felt someone watching her. She turned and saw a man standing a few stalls away. Middle-aged, wearing casual clothes, but something about the way he looked at her made her uneasy. Not threatening exactly, but observant, calculating. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly and walked off. Yetund felt a chill despite the afternoon heat. She finished her purchase quickly and headed back to her room, that feeling of being watched staying with her the whole way. She was being paranoid, she told herself. Nobody knew where she was. Nobody cared. She was just another pregnant woman in Lagos, invisible in her poverty. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something bad. She locked her door, sat on her mattress, and placed both hands on her belly. "It's okay," she whispered to her baby. "We're safe. We're going to be fine." But for the first time since leaving Victoria Island, she wasn't sure she believed it. Back at the Akafer mansion, Abena sat in his study with a glass of whiskey, staring at the wall where Yetund had once been cleaning on that night 10 months ago. He'd known this day would come, had known that secrets this big couldn't stay buried forever, had spent months waiting for the explosion, for Aluchi to figure it out, for his entire life to come crashing down. And now, from the way Aluchi had looked at him in church, from the way she'd been silent in the car, from the way she'd locked herself in their bedroom for hours. Now he knew that she knew. He should have told her the truth months ago, should have helped Yetund when she was pregnant and scared, should have been a man instead of a coward. But he'd made his choices, and now he would live with the consequences. He just hoped that, when those consequences came, they wouldn't destroy everyone in their path, including an innocent child who hadn't asked to be born into this mess. The investigators' report arrived 3 days later in a plain brown envelope. Aluchi had been waiting for it like a hunter waits for prey. When the house help brought it to her in the sitting room, she dismissed everyone, the maids, the cook, even the driver. She wanted to be completely alone when she opened it. Inside was everything she needed. Photos of Yetund, her belly swollen and unmistakable, walking through Agegunnel with bags of pure water on her head. An address, room 7, number 23 Balagun Street, Agegunnel. Details about her daily routine, washing clothes in the morning, selling water in the evening, attending the free clinic on Thursdays. And most importantly, medical records that the investigator had somehow obtained. Prenatal checkup dates, estimated conception date, everything that proved what Aluchi already knew in her bones. The timeline matched perfectly. Yetund had gotten pregnant during those 5 days when Aluchi had been in Abuja, when Abena had been alone in the house. Aluchi stared at the photo of Yetund for a long time. The girl looked tired, thinner despite the pregnancy, her face showing the hardship of the past months. But there was something else in her expression too, a quiet determination, a strength that poverty hadn't broken. For just a moment, Alechi felt something that might have been pity. This girl was young, alone, struggling to survive while carrying a child she hadn't planned for. A child that would be born into hardship because of one mistake, one moment of weakness. Then Alechi remembered her own 15 years of struggle. The shame, the mockery, the empty nursery, the dying marriage, and the pity vanished like smoke. No, Yetan didn't deserve sympathy. She'd slept with another woman's husband. She'd gotten the one thing Alechi couldn't have. She'd won in the cruelest possible way. And now she would pay. But how? That was the question. What kind of revenge would truly satisfy this burning rage inside her? She could expose them both publicly. Tell everyone at church, at parties, in their social circles. Humiliate Abena. Ruin his political ambitions. Make sure everyone knew he'd impregnated a housemaid while his wife struggled with infertility. But that would humiliate her too. She'd be the pitied wife, the woman who couldn't satisfy her husband, the one he'd cheated on with the help. The shame would cling to her forever. She could go after Yetan directly, make her life even harder, get her fired from whatever jobs she found, make sure she stayed poor and desperate. But that felt too small, too simple, and it wouldn't touch Abena at all. No, what Alechi wanted was something bigger, something that would make them both suffer the way she'd suffered, something poetic. She sat there for hours, thinking, planning, until finally an idea began to form. It was cold, calculated, perhaps even cruel. Perfect. That evening, when Abena came home, Alechi was waiting for him in the sitting room. She dressed carefully in a beautiful wrapper and blouse, her makeup flawless, her jewelry elegant. She wanted to look strong, powerful, in control. "Abena," she said calmly, "we need to talk." He'd been heading toward his study, but something in her tone made him stop. He turned slowly, and she saw it in his eyes, fear. He knew what was coming. "About what?" he asked, but his voice betrayed him. "Sit down." He sat. Alechi placed the brown envelope on the coffee table between them. She didn't say anything, just watched as he stared at it, his face going pale. "Open it," she said. "Alechi." "Open it." With shaking hands, Abena opened the envelope. He pulled out the photos, the report, the medical records. She watched his face as he looked through them, watched the guilt and fear and resignation wash over him. When he finally looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" Alechi's voice was flat, emotionless. 15 years, Abena. 15 years I've begged God for a child. 15 years of procedures and prayers and disappointment. 15 years of watching you grow distant and cold. And all this time you could have children. You just couldn't have them with me. It wasn't like that. Don't lie to me, not now, not anymore. She leaned forward. That night, when I was in Abuja, you slept with her, didn't you? He closed his eyes, nodded. Say it, I want to hear you say it. Yes, his voice was barely a whisper. Yes, I slept with her. And when she told you she was pregnant, what did you do? She never told me. I didn't know until you confronted her. Liar, you knew. You must have known. That's why you were so quick to send her away. That's why you stood there silent while I threw her out. You were protecting yourself. Abena's shoulders slumped. What do you want me to say, Alechi? That I'm a coward? I am, that I failed you, I did, that I deserve your hatred. I do. He looked at her with desperate eyes. But what do you want me to do now? Tell me. Whatever it is, I'll do it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the moment when she would reveal her plan. I want you to bring that girl back, Alechi said quietly. Abena stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. What? You heard me. I want you to find Yetund. Bring her back to this house. Give her the guest room on the second floor. Make sure she has everything she needs for the pregnancy. A doctor, proper food, care. I don't understand. Of course you don't. You're a man. You think in simple terms, guilt, punishment, divorce, but I think differently. Alechi stood up, packing slowly. You got that girl pregnant. That baby is your child, your heir, the child I couldn't give you. Alechi, please. Let me finish. Her voice was sharp. That baby will be born in 2 months, and when it's born, you will acknowledge it, publicly. You will tell everyone that we've decided to adopt the child of a poor woman who can't care for it properly. We'll be seen as charitable, compassionate, helping a young woman in need. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. That child will live here in this house. It will have everything, the best schools, the best clothes, the Akafir name and legacy. She turned to face him, her eyes cold. And Yetund, she'll stay here too, in the servants' quarters, working as our housemaid, watching her child grow up calling me mother, watching you give that child everything while treating her like the help. The cruelty of it took Abana's breath away. That's monstrous. Is it, or is it justice? Alach's smile was bitter. You wanted a child. Now you'll have one. I wanted a child. Now I'll raise yours. And that girl who came into my house and took what was mine. She'll watch everything from the outside, unable to claim her own child, unable to do anything but serve the family she destroyed. She didn't destroy anything. I did. I'm the one who. Who what? Made a mistake? Alachi laughed harshly. We both know it wasn't a mistake, Abana. You saw a young, fertile woman and you took what I couldn't give you. Well, now you'll live with the consequences. We all will. Abana stood up, running his hands over his face. And if I refuse, if I say no to this insane plan, then I'll divorce you, and I'll make sure everyone knows why. Your political career will be over, your reputation destroyed, your family will disown you, and that child, it will grow up in poverty with a mother who can barely feed it, knowing its father abandoned it to save his own skin. She paused. Is that what you want? The trap was perfect. Either way, Abana lost. Either he agreed to this twisted arrangement, living in daily reminder of his betrayal, or he lost everything and condemned his child to hardship. Why? He asked finally. Why would you want to raise another woman's child? Why torture yourself like this? Because I'm tired of losing, Alachi said simply. For 15 years I've lost my fertility, lost my husband's respect, lost my place in society as a complete woman. I'm not losing anymore. That child will be mine, legally, publicly, completely. And every time you look at it, every time you hold it, you'll remember what you did, what you cost us both. She picked up her purse, preparing to leave the room. At the door, she turned back. You have 1 week to find her and make the arrangements. Tell her we're being generous, that we want to help. Don't tell her the real reason. Let her think we've had a change of heart. Her smile was cruel. Let her think she's won. After she left, Abana sat in the silence of the sitting room, the photos of pregnant Yetund scattered around him. What had he done? What had his moment of weakness created? A child who would be born into a war zone. A young woman who would be trapped in a gilded cage. A wife consumed by bitterness and revenge. And himself forced to watch it all unfold. He thought about refusing, about taking Yetund and the baby and running away from all of this, starting over somewhere else. But he knew he wouldn't. He was too much a coward, too attached to his comfortable life, his reputation, his position in society. So he would do what Alachi demanded. He would bring Yetund back. He would spring the trap. And they would all live with the consequences. In Agegunnel, Yetund was washing her one good dress for church on Sunday, unaware that her life was about to change again. Unaware that the choice between poverty with freedom and comfort with chains was about to be made for her. She hummed softly as she scrubbed, her hand occasionally moving to her belly where the baby kicked. 2 more months. Just 2 more months and she would hold her child, see its face, begin their life together properly. She had plans, small plans, but plans nonetheless. After the baby was born, she would work even harder, save more money. Maybe in a few years she could afford a better room, maybe even a small shop, build something for her child. The future was uncertain, but it was hers. She was free, poor but free. And that freedom she was about to discover was about to cost her everything. Can you imagine being offered everything you need but losing everything you love? Alach's revenge is ice-cold and calculated. This isn't just about money or comfort. It's about control and punishment. Do you think Yetund will accept the offer when it comes? Would you choose poverty and freedom or comfort and chains for your child's sake? This is getting intense. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us what you would do. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe because next chapter is the finale you won't want to miss. The baby is coming, the truth is coming out, and someone's life will never be the same again. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. The black Mercedes pulled up outside the crumbling building in Agegunnel on a Tuesday morning, drawing stares from everyone on the street. Cars like that didn't come to neighborhoods like this unless something serious was happening. Yetund was hanging laundry on the line in the compound when she heard the commotion. Voices talking excitedly. Children running to see. Her landlord shouting at people to move back. Then she heard a voice she recognized. Solomon, the driver from the Aukeffer house. Please, I'm looking for Yetund. Room 7, it's important. Her heart stopped. For a moment, she considered hiding, pretending she wasn't there. Nothing good could come from the Aukefors finding her, but her curiosity and a strange sense that running wouldn't help made her step forward. I'm here, she called out, one hand protectively on her very pregnant belly. Solomon's face broke into a relieved smile when he saw her. Yetund, thank God. Olga wants to see you. Please come with me. Olga, she felt fear spike through her. Why? What does he want? He didn't tell me everything, but he said it's important. About the baby. Please, he's waiting at a hotel nearby. He said he can't come here, too many people watching. Yetund's mind raced. This could be a trap. Madame Alucci could be planning to humiliate her further, or worse. But what if it was about the baby? What if Olga Abena finally wanted to acknowledge his child? What if he wanted to help? Against her better judgment, hope flickered in her chest. Let me get my bag, she said quietly. 20 minutes later, she was sitting across from Abena in a small hotel room in Surroler. He looked older than she remembered. Tired lines around his eyes, his expensive suit somehow unable to hide the weight of guilt on his shoulders. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice formal, distant. As if they were strangers negotiating a business deal rather than two people who'd created a life together. You found me, Yetund said simply. I assume you want something. He flinched at her directness. I want to talk about the baby, about what happens after it's born. What happens is I raise my child. Alone, the way you forced me to. I know I failed you, failed both of you. He looked down at his hands. But I want to make it right now. I want to help. Help, Yetund's laugh was bitter. 4 months ago, I begged for help. I knelt on your floor and begged. You stood there silent and let your wife throw me out like garbage. Now you want to help. I was wrong. I was a coward. I let fear of losing everything make me lose my humanity. He finally met her eyes. But I can't change the past. I can only try to fix the future. How? This was the moment when he would spring Alucci's trap, and God forgive him, he was going to do it. Come back to the house, Abena said. Not as a maid, not exactly. As someone we're helping, we'll give you a proper room, medical care. Everything you need for the pregnancy and after the baby is born. Food, clothes, safety, no more sleeping in Agegunnel, no more selling water in the sun, no more struggling. Yetund stared at him, trying to understand. Why would Madame Alucci agree to this? She hates me. She doesn't hate you. She was angry, hurt, but I spoke to her, made her understand that the baby is innocent in all this, that we can't let a child suffer for our mistakes. The lies came easier than he'd expected. She's agreed to let you stay, temporarily, until you get back on your feet. It sounded too good to be true. And Yetund had learned that things that sounded too good to be true usually were. What's the catch? She asked. No catch. You'll stay in the guest quarters. You'll help around the house, light work, nothing that risks the pregnancy. After the baby is born, we'll help you find proper employment, maybe set you up with a small business. You can save money, build a real future. And the baby, my baby. Here it was, the crucial lie. The baby is yours. We're not trying to take it from you. We just want to make sure it has a good start in life. Proper medical care, good food, a safe place to grow. He paused. Every child deserves that, don't you think? Yetund's hand moved to her belly. Yes, every child did deserve that. And right now, she couldn't provide it. She was barely surviving. What happened when the baby came and she had to work even harder while caring for an infant? What happened when she ran out of money for food or medicine? I don't trust you, she said flatly. Either of you. I don't blame you. But Yetund, think about the baby. Think about what's best for your child. Those words, what's best for your child, they were the hook. Every mother's weakness. The willingness to sacrifice anything, even their own comfort and safety, for their children. I need to think about it, Yetund said. Of course, but the baby is due soon. In 6 weeks, the doctor said. You need prenatal care, a safe place to give birth. You can't have the baby in that room in age gunnel. He was right. She knew he was right. The clinic had already warned her that her blood pressure was high from stress, that she needed rest and proper nutrition, that a difficult birth in her current conditions could be dangerous for both her and the baby. 1 month, she said finally. I'll stay for 1 month. If I feel uncomfortable, if anything seems wrong, I leave. Immediately, you don't stop me. Abena nodded, relief flooding his face. 1 month, that's fair. But they both knew it was a lie. Once she moved back into that house, once she was dependent on them again, leaving would be much harder. Still, what choice did she have? 2 days later, Yetund moved back into the Akafur mansion, this time given a room on the 2nd floor, small but comfortable, with an actual bed, a private bathroom, air conditioning. Luxury compared to age gunnel. Madame Aluchi had greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Welcome back, Yetund. I hope we can put the past behind us and focus on what's important, that baby's health. Thank you, madam, Yetund had said, not believing a word. The first week was strange but bearable. She was given light tasks, folding laundry, organizing closets. She ate proper meals for the first time in months. She saw a private doctor who checked the baby and declared everything healthy. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt like a prisoner in a golden cage. Aluchi watched her constantly, not openly hostile but watchful, calculating, like a cat watching a mouse it planned to play with later. And Abena avoided her entirely. She would see him in the house, but he never spoke to her, never looked at her, as if pretending she didn't exist would somehow erase his guilt. 4 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, Yetund went into labor. It started as a dull ache in her back, then progressed quickly to contractions that took her breath away. The doctor was called. A room was prepared. And through 12 hours of pain and fear and exhaustion, Yetund brought her baby into the world. A boy, healthy, loud, perfect. When the nurse placed him in her arms, still wet and crying, Yetund felt her heart break and heal simultaneously. This was her son, her child, the reason she'd endured everything. He's beautiful, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. My beautiful boy. Aluchi stood in the doorway watching this moment, and something twisted inside her. This should have been her moment, her baby, her joy. Instead, she was watching another woman, a housemaid, experience the miracle she'd been denied. But the plan was in motion. Soon, very soon, that baby would be hers. 3 days after the birth, when Yetund was still weak and exhausted, Aluchi made her move. She entered Yetund's room with papers, legal documents. Her lawyer stood beside her. What's this? Yetund asked, her son sleeping in her arms. A formality, Aluchi said smoothly. Just documentation that you're staying here, that we're providing care, for legal purposes. I don't understand. It's simple. The government requires documentation when someone is living in your house, receiving financial support. Just sign here. And here, it protects both of us. Yetund, exhausted and overwhelmed, wanting only to focus on her baby, signed the papers without reading them carefully. She just signed away her parental rights. 2 weeks later, when she'd recovered enough to start thinking clearly, Yetund discovered the truth. She'd been trying to register her son's birth when the registrar had looked at her strangely. But madam, according to these documents, you're not listed as the primary guardian. Mr. and Mrs. Akafur are. What? That's impossible. He's my son. But it wasn't impossible. It was legal. The papers she'd signed hadn't been simple documentation, they'd been adoption papers. Carefully worded, deliberately confusing, legal enough to stand up in court. When she'd confronted Aluchi, the woman had dropped her mask entirely. "Did you really think we brought you back out of kindness?" Aluchi had laughed. "That baby is an Akafir. It will be raised as an Akafir, with the Akafir name, wealth, education, future, everything you could never give it. You can't do this. He's my son." "Not according to the law. You signed the papers, your signature, your thumbprint, all legal." "I'll fight this. I'll go to court." "With what money? What lawyer?" Aluchi had leaned close. "You're a poor housemaid who got pregnant and abandoned her baby. That's what everyone will think. That's what the courts will see. You think you can win against us, against our lawyers, our money, our connections." Yetund had felt the world tilting beneath her. Please don't do this. He needs his mother. I need my son. He needs a family that can provide for him. You can stay, work here, see him grow up, watch him become everything, but as a servant, not as his mother." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. To keep Yetund close enough to see her son, but far enough never to claim him. To make her watch another woman raise the child she'd carried for 9 months. "I'll tell him," Yetund had said desperately. "When he's older, I'll tell him the truth." "No one will believe you. A bitter housemaid making false claims. They'll think you're mentally unstable. We'll have you removed from the house, and you'll never see him again." That night, Yetund held her son, legally no longer her son, and cried until she had no tears left. She thought about running, taking the baby and disappearing into Lagos's chaos. But where would she go? How would she survive? And Aluchi was right. They had lawyers, money, power. They would find her. They would take the baby back, and she might go to prison for kidnapping. So she stayed, because staying meant she could at least see him, feed him, hold him when he cried, even if she couldn't call herself his mother. 6 months passed. The baby, named Abana Jr. by his parents, grew strong and healthy. He smiled easily, laughed often, reached for Yetund whenever she was near. Because Bobbies know, somehow they know. Aluchi noticed, and hated it, hated how the baby calmed in Yetund's arms, hated how his eyes followed her around the room, hated the bond she couldn't break no matter how much she tried. "You're dismissed," Aluchi said one morning, just like that, cold, final. "What?" "We don't need you anymore. Junior has a nanny now, a proper one. You can leave." "No, please, you can't." "I can, and I am. You have until tomorrow to pack your things." Yetund had looked at baby Abana in his expensive crib, wearing his expensive clothes, surrounded by expensive toys. He'd reached for her, making the small sounds he made when he wanted to be picked up. And she'd realized the horrible truth. Staying or leaving didn't matter. The baby was lost to her either way. If she stayed, she'd watch him grow up calling Aluchi Mama. If she left, she'd never see him again. But at least if she left, she wouldn't have to watch her heart break every single day. That evening, Yetund packed her small bag, the same bag she'd arrived with, and looked at her son one last time. She kissed his forehead while he slept. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. But I want you to know, wherever I am, whatever happens, you are loved. You are wanted. And one day, when you're old enough to understand, I pray you'll forgive me." She left the mansion at dawn, before anyone woke up, walked through the gates without looking back. And this time, she knew she would never return. 5 years later, Yetund stood in front of a small but clean shop in Aikja, looking at the sign she'd just had painted. Tons fashion and fabrics. 5 years of working 3 jobs. 5 years of saving every kobo. 5 years of refusing to give up, even when the pain of losing her son threatened to destroy her. She'd built something, not much, but something that was hers. She'd also found a community, other women who'd survived betrayal, loss, injustice. They'd helped each other, supported each other. One of them, an older woman named Sister Maria, had become like a mother to her. "You've done well," Sister Maria said now, standing beside her. "Your mother would be proud." "I hope so," Yeton said quietly. She thought about her son every day, wondered if he was happy, if he was healthy, if he ever asked about the woman who used to hold him. She'd kept one photo, taken secretly the day before she left. Baby Abena sleeping peacefully. She looked at it every night before sleeping. Meanwhile, in Victoria Island, 5-year-old Junior was asking questions his parents couldn't answer. Mama, why do I look different from you and Papa? Why don't I have cousins like other children? Who was that lady in the old photos, the one who used to hold me? Aluchi had burned those photos, all of them, trying to erase Yeton from history. But children remember. In their bones, in their hearts, they remember what adults try to make them forget. And Abena, watching his wife grow more bitter and his son grow more confused, wondered if their revenge had been worth the price. He'd gotten the child he wanted. Aluchi had gotten the baby she'd been denied. But they'd lost everything else. Peace, happiness, the ability to look at themselves in the mirror without shame. The house on Victoria Island was still beautiful, still luxurious, still empty of everything that mattered. Some wounds, Yeton had learned, teach lessons that apologies can never heal. Some choices destroy everyone involved, even the ones who thought they won. And some secrets, no matter how deeply buried, always find their way to the surface. Because truth, like children, has a way of demanding to be acknowledged. Eventually. The end. This story hit different, didn't it? Yeton lost her son but kept her dignity. Aluchi got the baby she wanted but lost her soul. And Abena, he lost everything that mattered while keeping everything that didn't. What's your take? Did anyone really win here? Have you ever made a choice you thought was right but haunted you forever? Share your story in the comments below. Your testimony might help someone else who's going through their own battle. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories by Tino for more powerful African stories that tell the truth about life, love, and the consequences of our choices. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Until next time, remember, some victories cost more than defeat, and the real measure of strength isn't what you take, it's what you protect. God bless you all.